For those of you that know of my meaningless existence in this futile world, you would know that I'm a huge fan of Chainsaw Man and therefore its author Tatsuki Fujimoto. Now, I've made numerous videos on Chainsaw Man for people to know of my view on it, but the author Fujimoto is someone that is very peculiarly interesting to me, even though I practically know nothing about him. For example, his only social media account is Twitter, and it's called Nagayama_Koharu, and the account is pretty much a role-playing account where he pretends to be a third grader named Koharu Nagayama and tweets about sweet desserts and occasionally his older brother who is a manga artist. From the little information that I've gathered, he's a very strange and peculiar individual. Anyways, recently Fujimoto made a one-shot called Look Back, and it's really good. I wasn't gonna make a video on it originally, but there's a few things I wanted to discuss regarding it, so discuss we shall. The one-shot is a 140-page tearjerker about two girls who like to draw pictures. The first girl is named Fujino, who is an outgoing girl that draws 4-panel manga strips for the school newspaper. Her art is mediocre at best, but her writing makes up for it, and all the other school kids seem to really like what she's doing. One day, a teacher asked Fujino if she could share her paper manga slots with a truant that doesn't go to the school named Kiyomoto. She reluctantly agrees, and on the next school paper, Fujino sees Kiyomoto's artwork and becomes incredibly jealous. This sparks a one-sided rivalry between the two, as Fujimoto spends the rest of her elementary school days trying to become a better artist, but eventually quits after she realizes that her art is not as good as Kiyomoto's. Eventually, graduation comes around, and the teacher asks Fujino to take the certificate to Kiyomoto's house, where she would eventually meet her, and realize that Kiyomoto was actually a fan of Fujino's work before she quit. Eventually, they start working together on mangas and submit them to different competitions and get good success. And after that, they're offered to serialize a manga series after they graduated high school. However, this is where their partnership would end, because Kiyomoto wanted to go to art school and improve her art, as well as better herself as a person, while Fujino would continue her manga journey. This would stain their relationship forever, and they would go on their own ways. Until one day, while Fujino is working on her successful manga, she catches the glimpse on the news of a man attacking students at an art school with an axe, and that man would end up killing Kiyomoto. Fujino would blame herself for this, because she felt that if she didn't go see Kiyomoto that day, she would have never left her house, and eventually Fujino would dream of a reality where she didn't meet Kiyomoto. In this alternate reality, Kiyomoto still ends up going to art school, but Fujino isn't a manga artist, so she ends up saving Kiyomoto from an axe and they both live, eventually working on a manga together. But that isn't the ending that was meant to be, so she goes back to working on her manga series, and the story ends there. There's a few things that I found really interesting about this short that made me want to make a video on it. One is that it was released on the 2-year anniversary of the Kyoto animation fire, which was started by a deranged man that blamed the studio for plagiarizing his novels, which is the same motive as the deranged axeman in the story. To be released on the anniversary, as well as adding a plot element that is incredibly similar to those events, would make me believe that this is the way Fujimoto wanted to honor the people that passed in the attack. Many talented animators that were working in the industry passed away in that attack, many that still had a lot to prove. When the attack happened, which was 2 years ago now, I remember being extremely angry at the news when I read what happened. I think one of the reasons is because the studios made some really good animes that I really related to, and to see the people in the credits, some of them not living anymore, that just upset me more than it should have. Again, I didn't know these people, they didn't know me, but there was something about it that bothered me, that made me much more angrier. Maybe it was just a loss of tremendous talent, just like that, and it being just so futile, just for what? But that made me realize something, especially after reading this one-shot. Usually, during events like this, or events in general where many people die, for example like war or disease, it's really easy for people to just not care and just look at the death toll and just look at it as a statistic, rather than actual people dying. Millions of people died in World War II, and I guarantee most of you don't care. And that makes sense because we look at it as a statistic and not people actually losing their lives. Maybe if we knew what their lives were like, or what their dreams were, or what they wanted to be, we would care more. But to us, it's just names on a piece of paper, until it happens to someone close to us, to which everything changes. And I feel like this is the way that Fujimoto saw that event happening as well. There is a very raw and personal connection between the characters in the story, as we see them kind of grow up and become things that they want to become. And when Kiyomoto dies, the reaction of Fujino is incredible anger, delusion, and borderline insanity. She dreams of an alternate reality where she saved Kiyomoto and they had a happy ending. Like that is a delusional mindset. She could have dreamt of an alternate ending where Kiyomoto never left her house and therefore never came in contact with the killer, but she dreamed of an alternate ending where she saves the day and beats the Axeman to a pulp. This is a really interesting idea, I think, that was explored. I've noticed that in tragic situations where I'm emotionally attached to what happened, I also think of alternate situations where I could have saved someone, I could have been the hero, and if I was there, I could have done something. This may sound very selfish, hypocritical, and kind of insane of me, but I think the reason people do this is that it's a way to cope against what really happened by replacing it with a delusional reality where everything is okay until we eventually move on. And from reading this one shot, this is my interpretation of how Fujimoto processed those events and used that raw emotion to draw this one shot. Compared to Fujimoto's other work, this is by far the most mellow and grounded one, even with it having a Fujimoto feel to it. It felt much more introspective, and although I don't know Fujimoto at all, it feels like I'm reading from the perspective of the author rather than just random characters. It's really weird. Overall, I was very impressed with Fujimoto's one-shots. I'm very excited for Chainsaw Man Part 2. That was the video. Goodbye.